Oh, boy.
Everybody, here we go.
Jeffrey, you gotta get a sucking from me, buddy.
That was an aggressive lift like that.
Come on, break the record, Jeff.
Oh, this is 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds.
Over the record. Oh, my God.
It's a new record. Let me have the mic. Can I have the mic?
So blow, blow, Seminoles wind, blow like you're never gonna blow again.
Well, I'm here. I'm not sure where Corey went. He was supposed to come out here. He's supposed to be here for this big win. The Noles had lost. Oh, it's coming in hot.
I made it.
Cheer for a good team again.
Cheers. Go Noles.
Go Noles.
Hi guys, nice to see y'all. It's been a long time.
Well, this isn't going to be a fun edition of the Warchant Gameday Postgame call-in show built by T-Spark Enterprises here on Warchant TV alongside Gene Williams. My name is Tom Lang, and here we are broadcasting high above Aviva Stadium where, Gene, the sun is setting in Dublin, and the sun sets early for Florida State in terms of any hopes of running it back for an undefeated regular season. They're gone in 60 minutes of football. Florida State is 0-1 after a 24-21 defeat at the hands of Georgia Tech. And, Gene, last time we signed on for the postgame show for an actual game, not the spring showcase, Florida State played a team from Georgia.
Oh,
Florida
that's
State,
an actual game?
that Florida State lost, and you could talk about the circumstances of that game, and you could argue how legitimate that was. Today, the team from Georgia was the better team on the field for 60 minutes than Florida State was. The right team won, and that is really frustrating to say, and that's something that we're going to have to dissect here over the next hour plus.
Yeah, I think that is the most discouraging. Of course, it'd be frustrating if Florida State outplayed an opponent and they got a couple lucky breaks and they squeaked by. Years ago, that upset loss in Atlanta when, Florida State obviously outplayed them, but they ended up sneaking away. There's absolutely no doubt that Florida State was outplayed on both sides of the ball. If not for Ryan Fitzmagic magic in this game to keep Florida State in there and a really kind of gutsy drive by DJ there early in the fourth quarter to drive FSU right down the field and pick up, 2 4th and longs and a 3rd and 10, I believe, on that drive. I mean, that was something right there for him to pull that off. But in every other aspect of this game, complete domination by Georgia Tech. And I think one of the, we'll get into it all. I mean, I'm surprised. It just very little. I knew Georgia Tech's offense was going to be decent because they've got an experienced bunch back. Haynes King says he's good. Say what you want to do. He played really well in this game, and they were ready to play. They were coached up well. They were sharp on both sides of the ball. But the fact that FSU is basically manhandled is shocking to me. We thought the thing that would happen, that why we all thought FSU was going to win this game, was the defense. The defense would travel. So much experience on that side of the ball. They looked just sharp almost all during 2 days, and they did not show up. And we can talk about the other side of the ball too, and the inability to run the football, and Mike Norvell was not having it. He was gonna keep going to that run and keep going to the run. I get it, because that's supposed to be the strength of your team, and this is a team that was, they rank 120th against the run or something crazy last year?
Correct. Yes. This was a game where the assumption, and this is where you just got to own it too on our part, like, you believe that the defensive line and the offensive line, Florida State's 2 points of attack, are going to be very good. And that's what that's what all the talk was in camp. That's how it looked in camp. The defensive front was good. It was not today. Georgia Tech averaged more than 5 yards a carry. And some of that, Gene, is on maybe the second-level defenders not communicating properly, because Georgia Tech throws a lot of different directions and misdirection plays at you. But straight up, I mean, from that first drive, it's 8-0 Florida State. This starts in a good way for Florida State. But you watch Florida State's defensive front get blown off the ball. And really, I thought the only defensive front that consistently showed something today was the backups. The second drive of each half is when Florida State gets an empty possession and forces the ball back into the offense's hands. but the starters weren't great today. And then on the offensive line, it wasn't great either. So there are some issues here, Gene. I was concerned about Georgia Tech's offense this week. In the third and lang piece on warchant.com, I talked about how multifaceted it is, how well coached they are, how veteran they are. But I didn't envision that they would be able to move the ball to the tune of nearly 7 yards per play in the throes of this game, Gene, and then also over 5 yards per rush. That cannot happen. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I'm surprised that the score was as close as it was if the defense was, and this is where running the ball and shortening the game rears its head, because, again, this game flew by except for TV timeouts. But Florida State lost in the trenches today, and that's how they lost the football game.
Yeah, they really did. I'm not sure what's more shocking. I think it's actually more shocking to me that the offense was unable to run the ball against what should be a below average. They've made some changes. The new defense coordinator at Georgia Tech, and maybe they'll be decent, average, but so they're an average defense. But I mean, the fact that you ran like this, and I ran the numbers because I was shocked at this. Obviously that first series, which is a trademark of Mike Norvell, they come out sharp. They've got scripted plays. They march right down the field. Scored with ease. They got that touchdown. It was really impressive. And I was curious. I went back and looked, Tom. Going out that first series, they ran for 35 total yards the entire rest of the game on 25 carries. That's 1.4 yards per carry against what at best an average team with that experienced offensive line, that bevy of runners. And I know you can talk a little bit about kind of what maybe Georgia Tech was doing defensively, crowding the box, whatever. Yep. But I mean, further on that, at some point, does Mike Norvell realize, I get it, this is supposed to be my strength. It's not working. And it seemed like at times when DJ had to throw the football and make plays, he did. At least the short intermediate stuff. Down the field was not there. And I know that's a bugaboo with you because they were not stretching the field at all.
Correct. And that's something, typically, Gene, we don't sit with our compatriots at warchant.com and watch the game. And I'm sitting next to Corey today because we're all in the press box together and we all made the trip. You can see Jeff kind of in the background behind you as well. I know it's something that Corey's going to talk about and he's going to write about. We discussed it during the game that on second down, pretty much the entirety of the football game, Gene, it was a called run. No matter if it was second and long, second and short. That the shots down the field weren't taken largely in the first half. You had the one throw to Toafili that there was a pass interference call before the end of the half. But outside of that, vertical shots just weren't being taken. Now, whether that's an issue with the receivers, whether that's an issue with the play calling, whether that's an issue trust with DJ, the all 22 will bear that out for the coaching staff. But the bottom line for us is the reason I think Georgia Tech was successful at stopping the run is because they just loaded up against it. I mean, was Florida State going to throw it over their head at any point? And it really didn't happen very consistently today. I thought in the first half, Florida State left a few plays out there on the field, Gene, where a block here or a slip and fall there.
Or a drop by a freshman running back.
Or a drop by a freshman running back. And that was a lollipop of a throw, too. He's still got to catch it. Don't get me wrong. That's on the receiver more than it is the running back more than it is the quarterback. They left a few things out there. But largely speaking, Gina, again, it's just this was a loss. There's no two ways about it. Florida State lost this football game. But one group that never loses is T-Spark Enterprises, and we want to thank them for coming on board. Sorry, this maiden voyage, T-Spark, is sullied just a little bit. But we want to tell you about T-Spark Enterprises serving North Florida. Delighted to announce that they have been awarded the Distinguished GAF Gold Elite Commercial Contractors Award. This recognition is a testament to T-Spark's relentless pursuit of excellence and superior service that they offer to customers in North Florida and South Georgia. For all your commercial and residential roofing and construction needs, call T-Spark Enterprises 850-766-1340. That's 850-766-1340. They serve North Florida, South Georgia, Tallahassee, Monticello, Havana, Quincy, Crawfordville, Wakulla, Madison, Thomasville, Bainbridge. It goes on and on. T-Spark Enterprises want a guaranteed win? Call T-Spark for your next roofing or construction project. We conquer all peaks, and that's tsparkconstruction.com. So, Gene, Ryan Fitzgerald was a star today. I didn't know he had 59 in him. And at the half, I mean, I know you were out there in the stands for a half of football. You came up for the second half to the press box. You arrived just before the second half started, and we all shared the same sentiment. Feels like we're losing, but it's a 14-14 ball game. Again, outside of that first drive where Florida State goes right down the field, and they score on a 2-point conversion trick play. They're up 8-0. From that point forward, the better team was the underdog today. The underdog outplayed Florida State. So now they've got to lick their wounds on a long flight home. They get a little bit of a break. Actually, they spend the day tomorrow in Dublin, Gene, but now nothing is assured. in my mind, if the trenches are going to perform like that, they need to shore things up and play like the potential suggests they could be pretty quickly here.
So, yeah, when I came up at half, and we both had the same thoughts, that it's pretty amazing that Florida State was tied at the time because they were outplayed for most of that first half. And I brought up the point, well, LSU was up by 3 at half. Yep. And I really, so I was not concerned. I thought, you know what, they're going to get they're going to get it squared away on defense. They'll figure out what's going on offensively.
Last year. Yeah.
We all thought their adjustments would be made. They would be fine. And, what I thought early in the second half, Georgia Tech got stopped the first 2 drives. I mean, they went down a little bit, made a play. They missed that field goal. And then the next play, I think it was Lundy had the big TFL back there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, the defense is settling in. They'll be good. And, the offense just continued to basically try to run the football, had no success. And then they had that, that drive. Georgia Tech had a big drive down there. They got a touchdown just right down FSU's throat. They answered, which is a testament to kind of, DJ and him being able to come through in those clutch situations. But, man, to be emasculated on the final drive of the game the way they were, to me, that was the most disappointing thing. When the game was on the line, you figured, all right, you've goofed around long enough defense. You got all these guys up front. You ought to be able to stop them when you know they're going to run the football. Right at me, I had like horrible flashbacks. I think it was 2008. I don't know if you remember that game against Boston College when they were just gutted. At the end of the game, you knew they were going to run the football, and they just ran it right down FSU's
with a slow quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I guess, Haynes King, that's a bad comparison, obviously. Yeah. He's a little bit more mobile. I think his name was Crane or something back then, that quarterback. But that was just the fact that what a team is going to do. They wanted to grind it out at the end so they'd have the final drive, not give FSU the ball back, and that's exactly what they did. For them to do that, and I think a couple plays drove me. There's a couple long plays, and when they botched the snap, and I go, here's the break you need, and they were out of that guy's range at that point. Mm-hmm. And they go up 12 yards the next play. That was incredibly disappointed. They did not come through, and when they had to make plays on defensive side of the ball, they didn't.
Yeah, a couple of big third downs as well. They had a botched. I guess it was an exchange.
Well, if you look at the replay, the guy was in motion. He flashed right in front of the quarterback when the ball came.
I'm talking about the
fumble,
the third quarter drive. It puts them in a 3rd and long after about a mesh point issue with Haynes King. And then they hit a big play the next play, and they convert. They move the chains, and then they score a touchdown there. That's a little bit of fumble luck. That could have ended up. There were 3 guys players there, 3 guys to 1, but it ends up back with Georgia Tech. But still, Haynes King made more plays when more plays needed to be made than Florida State did. And the bright spot for DJ were those 2 4th down throws, Gene. But again, you have a chance to get off the field, you have a chance to end a drive, and then at the end of the game, you've got a chance to make sure that if Georgia Tech's going to try a game-winning field goal, they're going to do so from 50-some-odd yards. The one thing that I thought was a little frustrating, I thought maybe the kid went out of bounds with forward momentum, and the clock should have stopped there, but they rolled it. And so obviously Georgia Tech could run it down to 5 seconds and kick the game-winning field goal, and that's exactly what they did. It's just, sometimes, Gene, when we do these post-game shows after a loss, and we haven't done a whole lot of those in the last, year plus, you feel like maybe Florida State left something out there, there was a mitigating circumstance. Maybe, if something turns just a little bit different.
A couple weird turnovers,
a couple of weird plays. Yeah, strange football being football. This was just, unfortunately, this is a loss in every way, shape, and form. And it'll be interesting to hear what Mike Norvell has to say. We'll have that coverage for you, of course, at warchant.com. His press conference is ongoing now. I'm sure it'll be here on the channel, but head over to warchant.com for all the reaction there. But this was just, there's nothing more you can say about it, Gene, other than Florida State is 0-1, and they deserve to be 0-1 at this point. Now, we are going to hear from you on the Warchant Gameday Postgame call-in show. We're going to wipe up that phone line in just a moment. Again, we were on a pretty good run here, Gene, where, the callers get involved in the show, and we get to talk about maybe tweaking some things after a victory. But now Florida State has to go right back to work, and Mike Norvell's favorite word is respond. They're going to need to because they're facing another mobile quarterback with a worse offensive line, don't get me wrong, in Boston College. But still, there's a lot of waking up that needs to be done when they get back to Tallahassee.
And I think the frustrating thing for obviously the fans and I think for the coaching staff is what you went into assuming was your strengths. Maybe not. Georgia Tech may be a little bit better offensively than we think, but and we know the first games are weird. Anybody who's been around college football for a while knows. And I think part of the defensive ills, I believe, is one of those first game things. You just don't do a whole lot of live tackling these days. And that was very apparent a lot of times. And a lot of times guys took bad angles and they were not in the right positions. Georgia Tech did a lot of motion and threw Florida State up, but sometimes it was pure tackling.
Yeah.
It was very poor at times. And I think that's one of those things where I think by, 3, 4, 5 games in, this can be a much better tackling team. But when you play a solid offensive team in an opener, you better be playing your best game or this is what's going to happen. So I think that it's going to be tough for the coaches on both sides about what Mike Norvell went to this whole thing. We're going to be a running team.
Yeah.
You can't change the offensive line, really. I mean, maybe you could shake up a player or two here or there, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, maybe not having Alex Atkins here is a bigger impact than we thought.
So there's a contribution. We thank those of you who are in the chat right now who are contributing to the program. You're most generous. It's been a fun week here in Dublin with just a thud of an end, but Joshua is the first person who contributed to the program. And he says, not a good start at all, but we have a whole season to go. Lots of soul searching this next week. How impactful was it not to have Atkins there? And Gene, I mean, he was here in Dublin for everything but game day. And one thing I can tell you is they did rotate the offensive linemen a lot throughout this game. There's drive 3, I believe. The starters were shuffled out. Many of them were. Richie Leonard moved from left guard to right guard. TJ Ferguson played left guard coming off the bench. Then Robert Scott was out there at right tackle instead of Jeremiah Byers. Now, Scott allowed an awful sack that ended up extending a drive because it was a face mask penalty. But there was a lot of rotation, and that's something that they plan beforehand. They don't necessarily play and ride the hot hand on the offensive line. Alex Atkins talks about this all the time. They communicate beforehand who's going to come in, what substitutions are going to happen for what drives. And I think after the first half, they decided that maybe some guys need to stay on the sideline. And, Keandre Jones was out there for a bunch of the second half after starting the football game. And he was playing right guard with the starting group. Jeremiah Byers was out there for an awful lot. I don't know that there's much more he could have done, but I will say that this was a very disappointing game for the offensive line. And unfortunately, I thought Darius Washington had a rough game today too. And Mike Norvell had talked about him as potentially an All-American left tackle. Yeah. It's not a great start. Not a great start for the offensive line.
No, I don't think schematically is what we're referring to in Alex Atkins, but I think when things go rough for a group,
psychologically,
the guy that's there, their leader that's been with there the whole time, I mean, maybe that could have an impact. But again, we're kind of reaching a little bit we're trying to come up with reasons why, because sometimes we watch and people already complaining about what you guys saw in practice. You're not reporting. I mean, we report what we see. And it looked like the running game was very solid and was good, and it looked like the defense was, looked very, very good. I mean, it looked like maybe not an elite defense, but definitely a solid all-around defense that I didn't think something like this would happen. But again, we always tend to look at myopically through Florida State's perspective and not realize that Georgia Tech, I mean, Haynes King, he played a hell of a game. I mean, I don't think of too many mistakes he made. That one botched snap you mentioned. Exchange he had, but other than that, I mean, he didn't make bad throws. He made good decisions. He ran when he had to. When they had to have a play, he figured out a way to get it done. There was a couple times when he was throwing under pressure and he got the ball on target. I didn't think that was something maybe was in his repertoire, seeing him play last year. But guys get better, and he was good last year, and he looks even better this year.
Yeah, the 3rd and long after the fumble in the third quarter. Yeah. Marvin Jones is essentially hitting him, and he's leaping off the ground to make the throw, and he throws a strike, and that's how they move the chains. He missed some open guys today, but when he missed, he didn't turn the ball over. And Gene, last year he threw 16 interceptions. He didn't turn the ball over today.
Yeah.
So that's the key. That was one of the problems that Georgia Tech wanted to clean up was they were way too turnover prone. Now they get a little bit of fumble luck today, but Haynes did not put the ball in danger. And what we talked about this offseason in camp, the secondary is very good. And we thought the front was going to play very well. The secondary wasn't tested all that much today. Haynes completed, I think when the third quarter started, he had 3 completions, and they were all for under 6 yards. But eventually you're going to have to commit more, and this is something that Adam Fuller talked about last week. We don't want to have to commit extra bodies to help against the run. And Florida State did, and obviously it opened up some shots down the field. And, c'est la vie. Florida State loses the game by 3. Jared, thank you very much for your contribution. Imagine traveling to play to Dublin and play like straight cheeks. Did we not teach eye discipline at all? Well, I couldn't read that very cleanly, Jared, but I get your point. The linebackers did have a rough day, and this is a very tough offense to communicate through and play through. And, Gene, even when they did make a play at times and they bottled up the initial run, a cutback lane was available or a tackle was not made. There was a combination of things going on, and you saw a lot of rotation at linebacker. I think they were searching for something there. DJ Lundy played an awful lot of the game. Unfortunately, he was isolated a couple of times in a one-on-one situation. There was a big third down conversion in that game-winning drive for Georgia Tech where he's one-on-one against the running back, and he's just not going to beat him to a spot, and that's how they convert. Omar Graham played a ton in the first half, not a whole lot in the second half. Cam Riley played a ton in the first half, not as much. Blake Nicholson was in there. They ran 4-3, so they threw a lot of players out there, but the results weren't where they needed to be.
This is going to be a fun time in the film room, I'm sure. Like you said, all those mistakes on the defensive side, the bad angles and some of the other stuff that happened, guys being out of position at times. And that's and obviously the tackling too, but that's something that you're going to work on a lot this next week as soon as they get back to Tallahassee in a couple days before that BC game. But, yeah, I mean, you're right. There are several plays where it looked like, at least from our perspective, like, okay, it's going to go for a 1-yard gain, 2-yard gain. Suddenly the guy cuts back and it ends up being an 8, 9, 10-yard gain just out of the blue. But it seemed to happen repeatedly to that defense. That's just something we didn't see, it seems like, at all last year, Tom.
Yep, agreed. A few more of these contributions before we take a quick break from our sponsor, T-Spark Enterprises. Ian, what happened to the defensive front? They got blown off the ball. I mean, they lost more than they won today, Ian. And, again, I thought the best defensive front, second drive, first half, second drive, second half. And it was a lot of backups out there. Byron Turner, Lolahea, Farmer was out there. But then your other interior lineman was Daniel Lyons, I believe, in those situations. And, they lost. And that we did not see that coming.
That raises another question. I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, you don't want to overreact to something like that. I mean, we think that starting four is really good.
Yeah.
So you don't overreact. But I mean, if they continue to play mediocre, maybe in a week or two, maybe some jobs are up for grabs.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, the way Mike messages this thing, the way the rotation looks next week when they play Boston College 2 Mondays from now. I mean, I'll be fascinated to see if the coaches signal that they are having second thoughts about things or if they're staying the course. It's a big week of practice for Florida State now. Mike called a game that played to the strength of Georgia Tech. I mean, I can't argue with the sentiment there. There wasn't a whole lot of over the top, and Georgia Tech just keyed downhill against the run. The MO on Georgia Tech last year was they were one of the worst teams in the country, statistically so, in stopping the run. But there was a lot of predictability out of Florida State today. I think that's what Marcus is getting to.
Yeah.
Angela, thank you very much for the contribution. Defense needs to show up. Yeah, when they needed to get off the field, Gene, unfortunately, there were some stops in the flow of the game, but in the throws when it came down to crunch time, that 12-yard play, you're right, that screen pass to the left sideline, it looked initially like they would have that bottled up pretty quickly, but they didn't. And 12 yards was the difference.
That's huge. I mean, I'm sure if somebody can run the numbers, if you run the numbers on the field goal of the percentage from being, was well over, what was it going to be? They were on a long 50-something yarder. To what the making. What I mean, I'm sure it was dramatically different percentage-wise. What I've seen out of that kicker so far, I think he's pretty shaky. I don't think he would have been making a 55 or whatever that one would have been. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, with the game on the line there, no doubt. Marcus, again, Georgia Tech had 8 in the box, and we had 6 in the box. Game, it did seem like Georgia Tech knew what was coming in a few circumstances, and fourth down conversions, Gene, kind of bailed Florida State out of some predictable moments where there was a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, they called a run, which I found stunning. And then the DJ bailed him out with a throw to Ja'Kai on the 4th down. Corey's Gallbladder. It's one of my favorite names always. Tom, so great meeting you last night. Gene, I was looking for you, but I never saw you. This will be the last post, unfortunately. What? College football has turned into the WWE. If you were in the stadium, I know what you – okay, all right, fair enough. Corey's Gallbladder. Hopefully you come back sometime. Yeah. But Stack Silver.
Thanks for the donation, though.
We appreciate it. And it was very nice to meet you last night. Stack, how did the FSU media get this team so wrong? Now we can talk about that a little bit more on the other side of this commercial break from our friends at T-Spark Enterprises.
Greatness is built through passion, perseverance, and an unyielding commitment to one's trade. It starts with dedication and the relentless pursuit of perfection. The early mornings, the late evenings, the sacrifices made, all for that one moment of knocking it out of the park. On every job we do, T-Spark, we conquer all peaks.
Our thanks again, as always, to T-Spark Enterprises. We're really happy to have them on board this season. North Florida, that's the place. That's the place. South Georgia, that's also the place. Called T-Spark Enterprises. They also do all kinds of things, bathroom remodeling, full-on construction. It's not just about roofing. It's about so much more at T-Spark Enterprises. All right, Gene. The miscalculation by the media or an underperformance by a team that has more potential? That's going to be the question that we're going to be searching for the answer for over the next few weeks. Here's where I'm coming from. In the offseason, Mike Norvell had talked about how this offensive line is going to be the best he's had by far in his time at Florida State, how they have a potential All-American, first-team All-American left tackle in Darius Washington. And we did see that they were able to generate some production on the ground in spring ball. You take that into fall camp, they look beefier and athletic. The timing, the rhythm of what they're doing on the ground looks pretty good. The defense wins more days than it loses, but the offensive line looked pretty good. And the defensive front, again, if you are working under the impression that Mike Norvell is telling you the truth, that this is the best offensive line he's had in a long time, and 22's offensive line generated a lot on the ground, and the defensive front is succeeding against that offensive line in practice, you think you're in a pretty good position here in the trenches. And it just didn't play out that way today. So did we get it wrong, or did Florida State lay an egg? I think that's what we have to figure out over the next month.
Yeah, well, it's hard. I mean, we see what we see. Like you said, Mike Norvell backed up with his comments what we saw every day in practice. And you look at the size of those guys, you look at the experience of those guys. Both sides of the ball. Defensive line is just shocking to me, almost even more, because we just thought, all these guys were thinking, well, these are future NFL guys. What I'd seen, I'd have to go back and maybe watch the replay a little bit. It's just kind of hard to see where, and you may have looked at the trenches more than me, but I'm just like Farmer and Daryl Jackson and those guys up the middle. We just figured they were going to be wrecking balls and dominating stuff. I didn't see a whole lot of that today. And we know they've got the pedigree to do it. So, like you said, this is more goes back to it's a first game. Weird things happen. Florida State, whether it was the long travel or just the first game or a combination of things, or being in Dublin, which is obviously unique for a lot of these guys. It looked like Florida State was flat and kind of out of it, where Georgia Tech was just, it looked like they've been practicing here for weeks. Like they were just completely in midseason form. And again, we don't like to give credit to the other team, but sometimes that's part of it. So Florida State, they were challenged. Georgia Tech was out here to win this game, but Florida State needed to play really well to get out of here with a win, and they didn't. They played just uninspired on both sides of the ball. Now, if it goes to the next two games and we keep seeing this, then, we got it wrong, and Mike Norvell got it wrong.
Yep.
But it's one game. I hate to do that. I think this is a good team. Their backs are against the wall, though. If they want to be getting to the playoffs, there's almost no more margin for error at this point.
No, it's a conference loss. That's the other hard part about it. You're talking about an auto bid and things like that. And how Georgia Tech does from this point forward, Gene, will also maybe inform how we look back on week 0. But this is still a clunker. You just got to call it as it is. This is a clunker of a performance. Uninspired, I think, is a good word. And gut check time, I think that was Angela's post. They got a soul search. That I agree 100%. Justin, I understand y'all have to play nice, but when will you address the fact that bad coaching is the cause of a loss 2 years ago? Wake, Louisville, ultimately style points for the playoffs. Playoff, no style, too aggressive. Okay, well, Justin's not happy. I
don't blame you, Justin. We're not happy either.
We're not playing nice here. They got their butts handed to them tonight by a team that's not as good. That's a tough thing. And in the trenches where you think you're going to win most weeks, they did not. They're 0 for 1 in that regard. That's alarming. Buffalo Tom, this team is weak. Need to make a switch to Brock. Or we're going to the backup already. DJ's no leader. Disgusted. Both lines lost, Tom. I do agree with you there.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that.
Florida Man in Alabama, new NCAA rule. Commercials, timeouts after the 2-minute warning must be limited to 30 seconds. Now, that's because this game was on a crazy pace. We were missing those typical commercial breaks that you get, but I don't disagree with you. I think that if you lose the spots, you lose the spots, Florida Man in Alabama. Although I will say I kind of think that Georgia Tech's fumble before they get that 12-yard play and kick the field goal to end the game, I think that was in part because there were 7 minutes, Gene, of commercial breaks between two plays. I think they iced the Georgia Tech's offensive timing down the stretch there. That was craziness. And that happened in the first half too, Gene, with 15 seconds to go in the first half. They had a 3.5 minute break.
That's good. I hadn't thought about that because you have to realize where these TV networks work. They have to get a certain number of commercials in, and again, they're getting money for every one of these goes in. So they don't like a quick paced game where they don't get in enough ads. So unfortunately, we all pay the price with these kind of delays with this setup. And I will say this is one of the few games, going back to the comment about coaching, I think that Brent Key probably called a better game offensively than Mike Norvell did. I think it's fair to say that, Tom.
Yeah. Yes, I would totally agree with you. I would totally agree with you on that. Z-Chan, always the best. Thank you so much for your support. That's right, the official DMD of Warchant TV. Time will tell how good Georgia Tech will be and whether we are really that bad. Back to the drawing board and on to BC. Back to the drawing board is right, Z-Chan. Yeah, I feel that energy right now. Big Easy, 1604. Why didn't Lucas get more touches? He looked the best. LT needs to move to wide receiver. Yeah.
He did early on. I mean, they were getting him the ball, which I knew they were going to do a lot early, and he had some opportunities. Didn't break off the big play. I thought he might break off one or two. It looked close, but yeah, it seemed like he wasn't in the game plan in the second half.
Yeah, that catch he made on third down in the first half was kind of a bad ball. Good adjustment by Toafili to break back on it and move the chains for Florida State. This is the one concern I had, Gene, and maybe it's not the time now because we're trying to rifle through and thank everybody who's contributed to the program and get to some callers here on the post-game show. But one thing I was worried about was maybe over-substituting. Maybe sometimes you got to pick your guys because Cam Davis got some carries today. Keziah Holmes had a drive where he got carries today. Toafili, they started with Roydell Williams. And obviously, they have a lot of weapons, and Jalen Lucas is one of those as well. But I just wonder about shuffling personnel in and out and maybe losing the rhythm of a game, especially at a position like running back. I think it's a little bit different than wide receiver. Running back, like Trey Benson got better the more carries he got, Gene, I wonder about that.
That's a good, it's interesting. There are some backs that are like that. I think there's some that can come off the bench and they're fine, but there's some that really need to get a feel of the game and see how the defense is playing them and which ways are working for them. And if Roydell's that guy or Toafili's that guy, and you're limiting it, especially maybe in a first game.
Yep.
I guess that's another fair criticism. Maybe Mike Norvell could have simplified the rotation a little bit on that side and let the guys get a feel for this thing. Especially if he's just going to keep going to the run, regardless of what we're seeing on the field, he's going to dedicate to it. Well, let your guys that do that best do it all the time.
JG for real? No dogs, no special playmakers on this team. Too soon, JG, but I'm concerned. Too soon, though. Gordon Alford, thank you for the contribution. Well, at least there's a playoff game, or at least there's a playoff now. All's not lost, and I trust Norvell will make it right. He has earned the trust to see if he can make those adjustments. Thank you, Gordon. We appreciate the contribution. That's the level-headed manner in which to look at this game right now. But if you're pissed off, I don't blame you. To the 2,700 plus of you right now that are watching the Warchant Gameday Postgame Show built by T-Spark Enterprises, we thank you for being here. Make sure to hit the like button, even if you don't like the result. Subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. And remember, we're going to be documenting what comes next here for Florida State at warchant.com. And if you're watching right now on Warchant TV, we have a special for you. Use the code FSU1, FSU and the number one, $1 for 2 months of warchant.com. It's about to get interesting in Tallahassee to see what comes next after they get off the plane from Dublin. We're going to wipe up the phone number on the screen right here. Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes, kicking butt as always. There it is, 850-805-5911. As always, that's the call-in number. And I see we already have some people who memorize that number, Gene, because they're in the queue. And our first caller tonight, we're going to the 910. We're going to Kyle in Charlotte. Kyle, welcome to the program. Go ahead. Kyle?
Hey, you guys hear me?
There we go. Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kyle.
3, 2.
All right. Yeah, I'm just not surprised that Georgia Tech is a good team. I'm surprised that they were the more physical team. Their running backs ran through our tackles all the time. Up front, they were stronger on both sides of the ball. Just really surprising to see that from a team that we thought was going to be so good in the trenches. Do you think this bye week coming up lets the coaches go live in practice and really install some physical attitude on both sides?
Well, appreciate the call and the question, Kyle. They don't necessarily have a bye week just yet. It's a longer break, but they play Labor Day Monday night against Boston College. you better see a more spirited effort. You know, I don't think you have to install anything new to require that they come out with a little bit more fire, Gene, on both sides of the football. Get downhill, manhandle some people. It's you know, maybe after that point when you do have a bye week, you can take a look at some things, but they just need to play with more spirit when they get back.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. This team just, again, Georgia Tech wanted this game more. I hate to say it. It's a cliche, but they came out firing on all pistols. They were more physical at the point of attack. Florida State is probably bigger and more talented on both lines of scrimmage, but you wouldn't know that going into this game the way they were outplayed. So to me, it is just, you know, this is, you know, man up time for these guys. They need to get out there and be more physical and do that. I don't think there's any major adjustments being made, although maybe Mike Norvell needs to have some more plan Bs if the running game is not going very well, instead of just keep butting it into it. And it looked like at times when DJ was pressed on those long plays, he made the throws he had to do to make, you know, to move the ball down the field. So maybe you got to put a little bit more on DJ to throw the ball, not be willy-nilly throwing the ball. Run game should still be probably the basis of this team, but man, you got to do something to give the defense a little, keep them honest just a bit.
Yeah, agreed. And they did get out coached today too. I mean, that's part of it. You said it, Gene. You know, Key and the offense over at Georgia Tech called a better game. They executed a better game plan. We go to the 757 for the 126th time on Warchant TV. It is Gator Kirk. Gator Kirk now joins the program. Go ahead, Gator.
Hello.
Hey, Gator. Go ahead. Gator Kirk, fire away.
Gator Kirk.
3, 2. Sorry, Gator Kirk. We will go to the next caller in a moment. I'm beginning to wonder if there's a pattern here.
They don't seem to be hearing
Gremlins from Dublin.
Yes.
Jason Parker in the chat. Thank you very much for your contribution. At what point do we embrace the rebuild? Embrace it after a couple more losses, but you're not at that point yet. Is that correct?
It's one game. It's the first game. You got outplayed. You got out physical. You know, if we see this again against Boston College, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, agreed there. Julian Chandler, how did Mike go the whole game with 8 in the box from Georgia Tech and barely ever tried deep shots on first down? A mid-level high school coach should call that. Nothing but respect for Mike, but that was bad. The over-the-top stuff was a little bit frustrating to me as well, Gene, that there wasn't more verticality. And I think it also happened on second down a lot. It seemed like maybe if you did try a quick throw or whatever concept on first down, you were going to come back and you were most certainly going to be running the ball on second down. There was predictability there. That hurt Florida State. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and look at that, see how many plays, were there any passing plays? It could be 2nd and 3 or 2nd and 9, and they were going to run the ball either way.
Yeah, agreed. Julian Chandler, thank you very much for the contribution. And once again, we hope to see you next time on Warchant TV in that chat. Ronald, why don't we run more screens? Zero fight. They tried a couple screens. There was actually one to Lucas that looked like it was it looked like nobody blocked anybody. It's because I think they were waiting on something to develop to Jalen Lucas. But yeah, this team, I expected to see more screens out of this team. I expected to see a couple more deep shots out of this team, and they did not happen. Nico, thank you for the super sticker. Can't read or see what the super sticker looks like, but that's really cool. Thank you very much. And let's see, Joey Two Guns. First Go Noles win. Second, DJ's timing was off. Accuracy was as well. Third, what happened to the run blocks? Wasn't just the run blocking too. I thought DJ was under duress more than I expected him to be, Gene. There was the one sack that was wiped away because of the face mask, but I thought there was pressure there too, often enough from Georgia Tech. This was just that defense got downhill, played aggressive, and ours looked more timid. So again, it's just however you want to slice it up. We've had some issues there.
Can't add anything to that. It's just, it's just it's so weird. It's so simple to analyze this game. They were just outplayed in the trenches. I mean, that's what it comes down to in this guy. DJ didn't play his best game throwing the ball. He wasn't given that many opportunities. He missed a couple here and there. Sometimes the presence didn't look great at times in there. But, I thought he was – the fact that he showed me a lot when he came through on that drive when they were down 7, and he drove down the field and picked up all those the 2 4th downs, the 3rd and long. So, it seems like he's got enough in his repertoire to be a pretty good quarterback. It's just, again, the inability to run the football, the inability to stop Georgia Tech from running the football. That was the game.
All right, we're going to give it another shot here with the phone lines. Let's hope. Hope.
I would say, Tom, tell them if you can't hear us, but if you hear the click, just go ahead and ask your question.
There you go. Are we talking to? Are we in Long Island right now? Go ahead, Josh in New York. Coach, can you hear us? Man, oh man. This is that's what happens when you're abroad. We'll try and clean up that particular issue that worked before the show started tonight here on the Warchant Gameday Postgame Show. Again, Gene, a reminder for everybody out there that if you are a member of Warchant.com and you want a smoother app experience, this is something that we talked about recently. The On3 app is available in the Apple and Google Play stores for you. It is streamlined with On3 technology. This is especially for you iPhone users out there. We know you've had problems getting your Warchant app to sync up with your technology on iOS. iOS works beautifully with the On3 app. You can head over to warchant.com to find out more information about how to download it and get everything, synced up where your home screen looks proper and all that stuff. But the On3 app is a great way to enjoy content at warchant.com, which again, you can get for $1 for 2 months with the code FSU1 at checkout.
And I would say, unless you really like ads, and stick with the old Warchant app, because if you're an iPhone user, for some reason there's some weird thing that happens. You get too many ads using the Warchant app. You barely get any on the On3 app. So just download, like you said, On3, pick Florida State as your team, and boom, you're ready to go.
There it is. This is the Warchant Gameday Postgame call-in show. We're trying to work in on that call-in part. This is presented and built by T-Spark Enterprises. We'll be right back after a word from T-Spark.
Greatness is built through passion, perseverance, and an unyielding commitment to one's trade. It starts with dedication and the relentless pursuit of perfection. The early mornings, the late evenings, the sacrifices made, all for that one moment of knocking it out of the park. On every job we do, T-Spark, we conquer all peaks.
We conquer all peaks is right. That's the slogan from T-Spark Enterprises. We may try one more caller here in just a little bit, but we want to there's so many contributions here. Again, to 2,400 plus of you. Thank you so much for being here on what's a tough afternoon back on the East Coast. It's been a beautiful week. It's been a beautiful trip here to Dublin. The Aer Lingus College Football Classic is a first-class operation. We just wanted to be smiling when this whole thing was over.
And a beautiful stadium, man. This is just something. Aviva Stadium is just it's special. It's pretty cool to be here. Just unfortunately, not such a cool result for FSU, but it's a neat experience. Other than the final of this game, I'm glad they did it. It was pretty unique.
So Matt says not having a quarterback like JT was a big difference. Samuel says, thank you both for the contributions. Running read option with DJ is not effective. Everybody in the stadium knows he's not going to keep it. I think Tate would be far more effective in this offense. Well, I mean, DJ did a couple of times, but, he's not the most fleet of foot. He's got to get lumbering before he can begin to, get those chunks of yardage. But he can move once he gets up to speed. It's a tough thing, Gene, because clearly in third and you could do it in either way situations, third and neutral situations. Florida State decided to run the ball more than they decided to throw the ball. And what gives there? Even late in the game, they went for it on fourth down. It was a throw, but 3rd and 9, they called a run. It might have been 3rd and 8, but it's third and passing, and they call a run. This is interesting to me. Why is the question? Is it because you're not trusting your receivers? Is it because you don't want the quarterback to make the big mistake? Is it because you have too much faith in the running game? That's something that we're going to have to find out with more information.
He'll get asked. He's got to get asked. Hopefully, in the post-game show, someone will ask him about the sticking to the run even when it wasn't working. To me, it's the fact that your last thing you said. It's the faith in the run. The fact that Mike Norvell, we know, always wants to be a run-first coach. And like you said, he made the comment about the best offensive line he's had. He sees these running backs. He sees what they do in practice every day. It's probably was baffling to him. He just kept thinking, well, eventually, they've got to be getting, his goal was to wear the team down and impose your will late in the game. But I think Georgia Tech got more and more emboldened the more they were able to stop Florida State. And like you said, they stacked the box. And again, he did not coach a very good game. They should have made adjustments at that point, and he didn't.
Yeah, agreed. And that will be the thing that we talk about for a long time now before the Boston College game is it going to look different formationally? We'll see. Long season, says Robbie Peppers. We got embarrassed. Hopefully it'll light a fire under him. Tech wanted it more. Yeah, they did.
Yep.
Yeah. Why didn't they throw when clearly it wasn't working? This is going to be the question we're all asking ourselves. I thought there would be a greater balance, especially, Gene, when something is proven to not work.
Mm-hmm.
You would just think that there would be some deviation. And Kentron made a play when he had a chance to in a gotta have it moment. Malik Benson made a play as well. Ja'Kai Douglas with a great catch on the sidelines right underneath us that was reviewed, but he got his toe down, and that was on a third down as well. We would have been punting if not for that catch. So, I mean, maybe the assumption was by the coaching staff, and that, Gene, the way they're calling the game tells you what they think about their offense.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to call a bunch of runs if they don't think the strength of the team is the offensive line and the running backs behind them. So we're not the only ones surprised tonight. That coaching staff has to go back to the drawing board, as has been said. All right, we're going to give it one final crack here.
Come on, cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers. This is Caleb in Hawaii. Perhaps he can hear us. Caleb in Hawaii on the Warchant Gameday Postgame call-in show, built by T-Spark Enterprises. Caleb, go ahead. Can you hear us? One last try.
Come on,
Caleb, can you hear us?
Darn it. We're sorry, man.
We're sorry,
this
Tom,
is the
cannot
problem is taking the show
hear you.
overseas, being out of our element. Technology bites its ugly head at us, man. That's unfortunate.
Unfortunate. Like the performance in the trenches today, we got to take down the call-in
Yep.
number. We will take calls beginning again next week at Boston College. We apologize for the technical difficulties. I can assure you it had been tested before the show started tonight. So that's a bit of a bummer, actually a big bummer, because I love hearing our callers, Gene. They always have excellent takes, and usually in a moment like this, they're more reasoned than maybe even we are at times.
They've cocked me off the roof several times in the past. So I needed that today. I needed their love, and I'm not getting it.
Jaden Wilson, D-line got killed. Yeah, I can't argue too much with you there. Again, over 5 yards a carry for Georgia Tech. Never lose your nerd. Rotating offensive line still doesn't make sense. This was interesting. Again, that's on a script. And I in theory, you could say that I don't care if it's on a script. I just want 5 guys, the best 5, to play together, build chemistry together, learn the nuances of each other's game. And for the third drive of the first half, again, at right tackle, Jeremiah Byers comes off the field. Robert Scott comes on. At right guard, Richie Leonard is now at right guard. He moved from left to right. Terrence Ferguson, TJ Ferguson comes off the bench, and Keandre Jones sits in that situation. Will they continue to do that? I don't know. Again, Gene, sometimes it's not about the offensive line. If a defense knows that you're going to run the ball, they're just getting downhill and they're making plays. Maybe it's not as much about the offensive line. Maybe it's about the sequence of the plays.
Because I think you guys, and you can talk about a Jeff Cameron show. They talk about a Wake Up Warchant. I mean, we kind of knew coming in that Georgia Tech was probably going to focus on stopping the run.
Yeah.
The thinking was, look, they could slow it down a little bit. It's going to have some effect. Is it going to, like I said, I think they ran after that first series 1.4 yards per carry. I don't think there's any reality where they thought that was possible.
Yeah.
That they could be stuffed to that extent. Obviously, they didn't. Like you said, they kept running out third and long every second down. They ran the football. They just assumed what they saw in practice was going to work. It didn't. And you're right. I'm not a fan of the rotating the offense. I think there's 2 positions, quarterback and offensive line. Not a fan of rotating those guys in and out. Unless one guy's really struggling, I get it. You take him out. You put in the other guy.
Or there's a health concern and he can only give you half a game. Yeah.
Sure, but that was a little odd, and especially in the first game. Again, there's a lot we can question about this game, but they were, again, outplayed in the trenches, and that was the difference.
So I think this is a good point from Jeff in the chat. I'm more disappointed how we got dominated in the trenches on both sides of the ball than the loss itself. And this is an important point, Gene, because there was a chance there, especially after the fumble and a couple of third and longs for Georgia Tech on what ended up being the last drive of the game. Florida State could have gotten the ball back and won the football game. Like it was still in the balance, and Florida State would have had an opportunity if they were able to get a stop and stop the clock from ticking away. But I think this post-game show would still sound a lot like it does right now, because in the throes of the game, Gene, you'd be happier about the win. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely.
It's just that when you're talking about the process of it all, there would have been concerns at 1-0, and there most certainly are concerns at 0-1. Would you agree with that?
It wouldn't be as doom and gloom. We'd be like, you escaped. You got a lot of stuff you got to clean up. You got to put a fire under the asses of that offensive and defensive line to get their act together in the next game. And thank goodness you got out of it despite that. But yeah, I do think the underlying, it's a very scary, the underlying premise of this whole thing is that you got outplayed in the trenches. The 2 areas you probably thought you were one of the best teams in the country at those 2 positions, and you're not. You weren't tonight, that's for sure. Yeah, it's just it's a dud. And again, we have miscalculations on our own side, perhaps what we were seeing in practice, but
the plays were called a certain way in terms of run pass splits. They weren't successful. So I think Mike is pretty surprised with what he saw tonight. Johnny Zeno, Gardner, tight end slants open all day long. They only threw it 2 or 3 times. DJ looks slow and tentative. Bottom line is we got outplayed and outcoached. I thought he was tentative at times, but I don't think he's, I'm looking closer to the football, Gene, before I start pointing fingers at what worked and what did not. Was DJ great? No, I don't think he was bad. I don't think he was bad in this game. Do you have a different take on that?
No, I agree that the bottom line that he said bottom line, we got outcoached and outplayed. I agree with that. They were outplayed and they were outcoached. It's the first game for DJ starting here in this thing. And he made, like I said, that big drive. He made some plays in the second half when he had to make plays. He definitely wasn't perfect. I think the standard is very high going from Jordan Travis. He's not the game breaker Jordan Travis is. He's not going to be able to run and make those big plays or keep the ball alive, or obviously some issues with accuracy so far. But he isn't the reason I felt Florida State lost this game. I think he played well enough. He didn't turn the ball over. I think if the 2 lines were what we thought they'd be, I think FSU wins about what we thought the spread was, but they were absolutely not. We were completely taken by surprise by the play of the front group on both sides.
Kyle says, my boss offered me bereavement leave on Monday. Well, Kyle, take it. If your boss is offering it, take it. Scoot Johnson, first game of the season, and we got beat by a last-second field goal while playing in another country. All is not lost. I trust the staff and the players to build off early adversity. Go Noles. This is early adversity, Scoot, 100%, and we'll see what comes next. But I like the approach. All is not lost just yet, but they went from an immediate, hey, things look okay, to yellow alert. This is at minimum yellow alert for Florida State. Mike, he hates our evaluation. You guys freaking suck as talent evaluators. Just be better, men. Well, okay, I did call a perfect season last year and 10 wins the year before. Sometimes you get them wrong. We'll see how wrong everybody was.
Yeah, I got to reevaluate the staff here, I think, after this.
That's fair.
Go back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board, just like Mike. Scott Bruce, FSU figured out 2 things late on offense. Magnified by Georgia Tech's ability to burn the clock, 2 long drives without a touchdown. That was basically an no extra opportunity. Yeah, well, and they're scoring drives as well. They have a 17-play, 7-minute, 45-second scoring drive earlier in the game. This is why you're not playing Georgia Tech under Paul Johnson, Gene, with the option.
Yeah.
But it feels a lot like it at times because their bread and butter is multiple. Their bread and butter is being variable. Haynes King could keep it. He could give it. There could be a jet. There could be a counter. You just got to be on your P's and Q's. I thought, generally speaking, Florida State communicated okay before the snap. I just think that they were in the wrong place. They were hunting in the wrong place at times. And then in the first half especially, they just did not tackle very well. They didn't get them down on the ground.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, a little bit outplayed in the trenches, but you're right. The eye discipline was bad and the tackling was bad. I'm curious to see it. What do you think? So I get to do, if you're on warchant.com and you're a subscriber, you'll know I do the grades session the next day where we get the grades from PFF and kind of go through it all and let you know what's going to happen, who grades high, low, the position units. What do you think the lowest graded, not just unit, but there's tackling, there's pass blocking, run blocking. It breaks it all down. What do you think will be the worst thing according to PFF?
It's probably going to be tackling, I would think.
I think run blocking might be pretty darn awful too.
Run blocking is going to, it's going to have, I think the offensive line, there's going to be some bad grades there. I think Darius is going to have a bad grade. I think Byers will have a bad grade because they both were penalized on one play and they wiped away Jeremiah's. Robert's going to have an awful grade because of the sack he gave up, even though it was there was a face mask. He had a rough go out there. He looked very rusty in his drive. The first half.
2 years basically.
Yeah, it's been a minute since he played, and it looked very much like that. I also think linebackers, you're going to have a problem with some of your linebacker grades. I think Omar Graham's going to have a rough grade tonight. I think Cam Riley will have a rough grade as well. So we'll see exactly how they meet those things out, because some of the information they give is extremely insightful. Sometimes we disagree with Pro Football Focus. I think the linebackers are going to have a rough day too, Gene. There's no doubt about that. Nico, thank you again for the contribution. Do we have the player leadership in the locker room to lift guys up during tough times and respond well? We don't really know any of these current kids as leaders yet. They did not show up today. Can DJU stay quiet and nice? I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah.
The mantle has fallen to a bunch of different players. That was one of the benefits, Gene, of last year's team was you knew the leadership structure and you knew that the talent was there NFL wise across the board. And different guys are going to they're going to be tested right now in these moments over the next day or two as they're trying to pick themselves up and then make their way back to Tallahassee.
This is a big call for DJ too. I mean, he's got to take on it. Maybe he's not as vocal, but maybe he's got to be more vocal in this circumstance and do something. I think the other side of the ball, you got AZ Thomas, you got Shaheem. I'm thinking those guys. I'm not really sure on the defensive line. I mean, obviously you had Verse last year, was kind of the heart and soul of that group. I don't really know. Who do you think is going to be? You look at those trenches a lot, Tom. Who do you think is going to be the guy that needs to, get those guys in gear?
Well, I mean, the sad thing is if he was healthy, I think Robert Scott could have been that player. But unfortunately, he's clearly working through some things. Darius Washington will have to be the leader there. Patrick Payton has taken on an extra level of leadership this offseason. But, I mean, he's going through something that Jared Verse hardly ever had to go through. This is a big test right away. So, it'll be those guys. Josh Farmer can certainly be somebody who maybe rallies the team. And then DJ Lundy at linebacker. I mean, he's been around a long, long time. Shaheem Brown's going to have to be another player. I know you asked about the trenches, but these are the players that you're going to be leaning on. And it's tough on offense because you're shuffling in so many players and out so many players. It's going to have to be DJ as well. Scott asks or says, also hate the new clock rules this year. Took us all of one game to get burned by. Commercials made up for the last clock stoppage. An L for all of college football. There also was a rough moment for Mike with time management in the second quarter where Florida State picks up a first down near midfield, and there's about a minute to go on the clock. They do not use a timeout in that situation.
And the clock went all the way down. How much time did they lose?
They lose about 20 seconds. Because the play took forever to get lined up, and there was no urgency at the line of scrimmage at that point. You had 3 timeouts. You didn't use it. And then Ryan Fitzgerald bails you out.
Well, you got a half a second bailed you out too. I mean, the half had almost ended.
Yes.
If not, it was 1 second left initially. The clock went down to 0, but they correctly called that there was a second left in the game. But that could have easily just run the clock. You wouldn't even got your field goal attempt. And that was very odd for Mike Norvell, as buttoned up as he is and organized. You don't really see really off time management issues like that. That was kind of surprising as well. And you've had all off season. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's, they've got the new headset thing where stuff's going on. Maybe there's some new, I don't know, too much going on right now that he really wasn't on top of that. But that was in very odd circumstances as well. That has to be cleaned up.
Tom says he's done with DJ on that 3rd and 3. Remember that play
I brought that up, dude. Talk about that.
So
Tom.
This was an interesting play. It was a broken play, clearly a broken play. The team is going to reflect the leader. They will play hard for Brock. I'm embarrassed the body language from the defense the last drive. It's hard to say what body language-wise, Gene, we're watching from up high. Now we'll have to go back and take a look at that and see if there are body language issues or anything along those lines, because you want to stamp those out immediately. But that looked like a broken play to me a couple of ways in terms of the way the quarterback and the running back went after the snap. And then also it looked like they were going to call a counter to the right or quarterback power, something with a pulling guard. But then it appeared to me, Gene, that at left guard, Ferguson just stopped moving and didn't pick up a guy. And Mike was furious. That's the other part of it. So the Florida State sideline is across from us where we are sitting right now in press row. And Mike lost his you-know-what. So somebody did something wrong. That was a broken play more than, somebody not having the heart to go make a play. Yeah. And that was a bad look. Again, your special teams bails you out on a couple of drives. But that was a tough one. And Florida State had a lot of situational moments today, Gene, where they needed to make a play on defense. They didn't get it. On offense, something like that happens. You had a couple of drives that looked like they had potential getting to midfield, and then they just completely crumble and they don't do a thing. All those things add up to a narrow loss. Maybe that's the positive, is you do a lot of things poorly against expectations, and you're still potentially in a position where you could go to overtime or win the football game, but you shouldn't have lost this game, period.
And aren't those little mistakes on offense, the stall drives, magnified, and you got two teams running the ball and the clock's going like this, you're getting fewer drives. So, in the past, you have a couple more drives, you can make up for that at some point. But, man, those are, that drop pass, the penalty stops another one. Then that last series you mentioned, whatever, there was some communication or misplay on that. You gave up probably points on all those plays, and we're all remembering those because the game went so quickly.
That's where when we were talking about just, how Vegas had it set up and all that stuff, we were liking the under because the two teams wanted to run the football. Georgia Tech did it successfully. We did not do it successfully after that first drive. It's just
not for lack of trying.
That's correct. The stat again that you had was they averaged under 2 yards a carry after the first drive.
1.4 yards per carry after the first drive.
They ran the ball 31 times in this football game for 98 yards. Did Florida State?
They had 63 in the first drive.
That's unbelievable. That's really unbelievable. Gator Kirk, we apologize. Phone calls did not work. Out on a hold, but no luck. Love the coverage. Outplayed and outcoached this week. Not happy, but I love the Noles. Looking forward to the rest of the season. Thank you, Gator Kirk. We'll get those things patched up, and we'll make sure you're on the program next week for the 126th time. That's still going to count as a phone call. I'm counting it in your record books as you march towards 150 phone calls on Warchant TV. We thank you very much for your support. Jacob, he was the one that said he's going to get bereavement leave. His boss is a Georgia Tech fan. Yeah, they're a spirited bunch, that Georgia Tech fan base, and they have every right to be thrilled with how today turned out because hardly anybody gave them a chance. And I know that I thought it was going to be a 2-score win, and I was wrong about that. Bobby Houston, at least Mike Norvell took accountability for the bad plays. We need to give the young guys a chance to make plays. Go Noles. They did to a degree today, Gene. I mean, Cam Davis was part of the rotation, much more than I thought he would be. Like, if you told me before the game a freshman skill position player is going to be a significant part of the game plan, I would have thought it was LaWayne McCoy.
Or Elijah Moore. Or maybe even to a degree Landon Thomas. I wouldn't have thought it would be Cam because of how crowded that running back field is. But there he was. Well, that last scrimmage, if you saw a couple of clips they put out of him, I mean, he ran unbelievably in that last final scrimmage they had in Doak Campbell Stadium. Maybe that was just, hey, let's get him in a real game and see if he can replicate that. Well, he didn't get it. He dropped the pass. I mean, he didn't get much of an opportunity, but yeah, he was out there a lot.
They put him in a situation, a lead block as well on the first or second drive. So, I mean, yeah, they turned to him very, very early. That's something to monitor moving forward. They've got a ton of backs. How are they going to shuffle through all these guys? Let's see. Buffalo Tom, was it Verse and Fisk that made Fuller good? Or look good, excuse me. Where's the second half adjustments? What day did GY get in? Could it be jet lag? Georgia Tech get in? Please say yes. Georgia Tech got in the same time as Florida State.
We wish. And maybe a little shorter flight. Come on, they went out of Atlanta. Probably was about a half hour shorter.
Maybe so. The second half adjustments thing was a storyline of last year.
Shocking.
Yeah, and they came out better to start the second half, but then
defensively
it became same old. And defensively is where that remember the stats last year on how many touchdowns opponents scored on Florida State after the first half was over. It's too early to tell on a lot of this stuff. I just wish it was too early to tell with a win, but it's too early to tell after a loss, and you're 0 for 1. Caleb says in defense of Warchant, can you guys only report on how FSU looks versus FSU? You can't 100% trust any media outlet until the first game is played. Damian Craig coaching for Georgia Tech because they seem to know a lot of what was coming every play. Thanks, Caleb. That is one of the limiting factors, and we talk about that. I know on JCSG, and I bring that up all the time. Last year in camp, Florida State's offensive line looked like it was badass at run blocking and poor in pass protection. And it could not have been any more opposite when the season played out, that they were better in pass pro than they were in run blocking. But again, a lot of this goes on the notion that the head coach is telling you that he's got his best offensive line. Gene, we think about 2022 and how productive that ground game was. You salivate at that thought. If he's saying they've got a better O-line than the one they had with Trayshawn Ward and Trey Benson, then what could they do with this group and with this group of running backs? And, you just hope it's a clunker. And by the time we're doing this post-game show after Memphis or SMU or Clemson, you're saying, boy, that was a weird day. And Georgia Tech's not a bad football team. But as it sits right now, it just doesn't feel that way because you were a 2-touchdown favorite for most of the offseason, and you were at least a 2-score favorite going into kickoff today.
Yeah, again, I don't know what that I mean, we're kind of repeating ourselves over and over. But you're right. We're stunned. I mean, I'm stunned that they did not run the ball more effectively, and the defense was basically manhandled in the trenches. I mean, for almost the entire game. And we kept thinking after the second half the switch was going to get flipped. It did, I thought, early on, and then Georgia Tech, for whatever reason, was able to reestablish that run and just grind it out against FSU.
Another word from our sponsor, T-Spark Enterprises: prevent leaks before they start. Many large roof issues could have been avoided by fixing small leaks and defects before they worsen. Gene, you've been a homeowner a long time. I was for quite some time, too. It's when the little things add up and they become major issues. Fix those those minor issues to prevent more significant and expensive problems later. Again, T-Spark Enterprises is not just a roofing service. They also have general contractors licenses. So if they come out and they see that your roof is askew, that something is happening from a leak standpoint, well, then at that point, they can make the fix beyond what a normal roofing company can do. T-Spark Enterprises, awesome at what they do. They serve North Florida, South Georgia. tsparkconstruction.com is the website. Go to tsparkconstruction.com for more information or call 850-766-1340. We're going to take one more short break, and we'll come back with some closing thoughts on this, the first Warchant Gameday Postgame show of the season, and it comes after a loss. We'll be right back.
Greatness is built through passion, perseverance, and an unyielding commitment to one's trade. It starts with dedication and the relentless pursuit of perfection. The early mornings, the late evenings, the sacrifices made, all for that one moment of knocking it out of the park. On every job we do, T-Spark, we conquer all peaks.
All right, Jimmy, it's time to shoot from the hip a little bit here. Because we were just talking during the break that this is a game where what happened is not what you expected. Fundamentally speaking, we thought that we were going to be the better team in the trenches. That, Georgia Tech has a good offensive line, a veteran offensive line. That's going to be a challenge. But when you evaluate the 60-minute game and you talk about the trenches, Florida State will have won the battle. That's just not so. So here is a contribution from Prince, and we appreciate the contribution. Does this team have a shot in hell in winning the ACC? Shoot from the hip, Gene.
In hell? Yeah, they have a shot in hell. There's definitely it's stacked against them right now because, there's little margin for error. I guess in theory they could lose maybe one more and still get in it, depending how things shake out. It's possible, but man, you got to it's scary. Like, we just opened this thing saying, had Florida State lost in a fluky manner, it's upsetting, it'd be annoying, but you'd be like, okay, they're going to get this together. It's obviously concerning that what you thought were your strengths were not your strengths today. And you got to wonder, can these guys turn it around quickly? Because they can't mess around the next few weeks, or the season's going to effectively over. If I get it. There's 12 teams. It's easier to get in the playoffs than it did in the past, but you're not in the SEC. This is not a quality loss.
No, this is not a quality loss. You put that succinctly. You surprised me with that one because you're not in that particular conference. And don't check the hate mail right now in terms of conference stuff and all that, what happened in the offseason, because I'm sure there's a lot of people laughing right now at Florida State's expense. Marcus is a ray of hope. I won't act like the season's over. We can still make the Invitational. Margins are just razor thin. It doesn't feel likely, but it's not impossible. I think that's a fair and reasonable take to have. If you want to feel pessimistic about this group after today, fair. If you want to be optimistic and say that things can turn around, I agree with that too. I need more information. I thought I had a pretty good feel about this team, Gene, in the trenches. And again, the coaching staff did too. The way they called the game today on offense tells you that they believed that they could run the ball at will, or at least consistently enough to set up other things. That did not happen after the first drive. The way the defense called game today, they thought they didn't have to commit too much extra personnel to stop the run, and they could play base. That's what Adam Fuller talked about on Monday. It didn't happen that way. Okay, coaches, now you know that you're going to have to get a little bit more creative. And if you do, what does it look like at that point? That's why I'm not willing to go down the road and say that this could get really ugly just yet. That's why I'm holding out to see more information.
Well, you have some talent experience there too. This isn't, from a few years ago where the talent is lacking. It's very concerning in the long run. That's not an issue here. We know, again, notwithstanding today, the coaching has been very good from Florida State on both sides of the ball the last couple of years. So I'm more apt to think this is a little bit of an aberration. Again, if we see it another game or two, then okay, it's a trend. There's something systemically wrong with this program, with this team this year for some reason. But they've got the guys, they've got the horses to be pretty good. The horses stayed back in Tallahassee this week.
Tom, another contribution. Do you think Norvell trusts this team at all? Least aggressive I've ever seen him besides the ACC championship game. Could each of you share a change that you would like to see? Now that's interesting. That thought about the trust in the team versus playing aggressive. They need to look more aggressive. I would agree with that.
You said go ahead.
To speak on his trust level on the team, That's hard to say. What I do know is on third down, and third and passing, it doesn't seem like he trusts that situation for one reason or another. He only threw the ball on fourth down in a couple of key moments down the stretch, and DJ executed in those moments. But how does it look moving forward? One change I'd like to see. Gene, do you want to go first, or?
Well, we may echo the same thing. I got to see a little bit more diversity on offense. You got to spread some. You got to keep teams honest. You can't just sit there. I don't care if they're going to put 8 in the box. I'm still going to just pound it down your throat on every down, every situation. I mean, it makes the game so simple for a defensive coordinator and a defensive player if they know that's what's going to happen. I mean, you've got to figure out a way to stretch the defense vertically and horizontally, just get them all over the place a little bit, maybe a little bit more misdirection, some motion. You got to do something. I mean, that's what Mike Norvell is so good at, is being creative and getting defenses off balance. And he didn't do that today. I don't know. It didn't seem like he was out there coaching his normal game. So, I mean, he needs to get back to fundamentals himself. I'd like to see that on that side of the ball.
Yeah, at first drive, they were off balance. Georgia Tech, as you could tell, they had no idea what hit them. And then from there, they knew what was coming. For me, the change would be to consolidate your skill position players. That would be me. Consolidate the amount of touches your skill position players get, especially the running back. I'm just going to keep on bringing that up. I thought Roydell started the game very well, and then he didn't touch the ball for a half an hour, 45 minutes. I get that you've got a lot of horses in the stable that you want to distribute the football to, but sometimes if a guy is in rhythm, let him continue to be in rhythm. Now, that might be too early, and maybe, Gene, we're looking at this, later in the season, we're saying everybody's fresh. Like I talked about this last year. I got mad about the defensive rotation, but did that defense look fresh as could be? In the final few weeks of the season, they did. So Mike Norvell was playing the long game, and he was right. But here I am again saying,
but you don't see that on offense, Tom. I get that.
Yeah,
we see that in the NFL. We see that in a lot of places where there's that. You don't really see them doing that with running backs and offensive line. That's a little odd.
Yeah, agreed. Mike continues to send hate money our way. Thank you, Mike. I very much appreciate that. I'm so mad. I'm paying money to tell you guys to stop. Just stop. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate the contributions always. Was it a hype train or was it the truth last year that the team went undefeated? I don't know.
We were practicing how Jordan is tearing it up, and Keon Coleman is just really an elite type of player. He's got a great game. Johnny's looking. We're saying all the things last year, and what we saw in practice came to fruition. What we saw at least for one game.
Yep.
We're shot. I'm stunned too. I mean, I saw it. We all were out there a little bit. We saw, you and I mean, obviously the rest of the staff saw it more than us at practice. But
correct.
And you think all the coaches suddenly didn't see the same things too? I mean, they were all making the same comments. So again, it's one game. It's in a foreign country. I know the tendency is when you're almost a 2-touchdown favorite and you lose, especially in this fashion, is to just kind of you're looking for someone to blame. Yeah. It was just a poor performance all around.
My concern is maybe they showed up thinking that by showing up they were going to win. I don't know.
That would be incredibly disappointing to us, but it does seem like they thought they had the game.
They were flat. They were flat, and it's hard to explain that. And when you're traveling the same way that your opponent is, you can't blame that. So it's something else. Yuckmouth always bringing positivity to the end of the programs, and it's almost like a signal. When Yuckmouth contributes, that's time. Lose the first game isn't the worst thing. Can still be ACC champions. Boston College game tonight, I think it means next Monday, will tell us how mentally tough we are. I wholeheartedly agree. In some ways, I'm afraid to know the answer of what happens against Boston College from a mentality standpoint, but I'm really fascinated to see how they respond to this. This is not going to be a pleasant week of practice back in Tallahassee.
If they don't respond, come out and just on fire in this one, it's an indictment of this team, because I've not seen a Norvell team, and when he's had horses, at least. I'm talking the first COVID year or anything like that, but if they come out flat again against BC, then I'm going to agree with some of these naysayers that say this team is just awful. But I'm not going to make that conclusion. I've seen Florida State teams in the past lay complete eggs. I saw them lost 31-0 way back in the day against Miami and then run the table. I've seen them do all things like that. You can look awful in one game, clean it up, and it's a wake up call, and you respond. But will they? That's the number one question right now.
We're going to document that and how they approach practice and how they approach every moment they share with us in between right now and Monday, opening night at Doak Campbell Stadium, the home opener for Florida State against Boston College. All eyes on Florida State. Warchant.com will document every single bit of that. We'll have the Pro Football Focus grades on Warchant.com in the morning. You'll have Corey's column. The time shift, Gene, it's still getting me. You're going to have Corey's column this evening because obviously it's only 4 o'clock over there back in the States, nearly 5 o'clock. It's closing in on 10 p.m. here.
Might have BFF grades at 5 in the morning.
You might just. So remember, warchant.com is your #1 source for all things FSU coverage. Code FSU1 gets you $1 for $1 for 2 months of access to warchant.com. This is going to be a fascinating 2 months. A late contribution from my friend Mark. Mark, I wasn't nervous until I see the guys dancing in the city when they got here. It's the trip of a lifetime. That's the other hard part too. There's no easy answer here, but if we look stunned, I'm sure the coaching staff, when they get alone tonight into this coaching staff, I'm sure will have some real things to say, and what changes they make will be really, really fascinating. Florida State's been up against it before, but not with this much talent, Gene. So we'll see what comes next, and we'll document that for you over the next week on warchant.com. A note on some of our live shows. Obviously, we'll be returning to a normal schedule once we get to about midweek. Next week, there's travel days. Jeff and myself are leaving on Monday. We aim to have some content for you on Warchant TV early in the week, but the live program, as you know, at 1 o'clock Eastern on Warchant TV returns Wednesday. And we've got obviously all kinds of great programming on the channel, like Gene, the Warchant Rap with Corey and Ira. I'm looking out on the field. I was waiting to see if they were recording yet, and it looks like they might be down there in the corner. So you can expect that on Warchant TV here very, very soon.
Think Corey will run through the sprinklers?
Maybe he should. He can get the. It's a little bit cold out right now for that though. That's the other thing. It is a.
Yeah, Viva's got all the sprinklers going in the stadium right now. I think Corey needs to soak himself.
Yeah, Gene. One final thoughts here. I just want to say thanks, obviously, for the support. As there's a lot of staff members out here in Dublin, and not all of us had to be. So first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be out here to cover a once in a lifetime event like this. I just wish it ended on a happier note. This has been the experience of a lifetime, and I know a lot of Noles out there experienced it just like we did. And this is it's a forgettable end, but it's a memorable week.
Yeah, it's been a fun. It was so great last night at the old storehouse, getting to talk to so many. Our friend Griff, who we talked to, the young man who posted on the message boards, if you saw this a few months ago, out of coma, and just what he was saying about your show, the Jeff Cameron show.
Yeah.
And Wake Up Warchant, how inspirational that was during while I was paralyzed and going through rehab and all that. So, I mean, hearing stuff like that, man, it was fantastic. And then just sharing a lot of pints of Guinness the last couple of days with FSU fans was so rewarding. And having you guys out, a big part of that was our partners. Well, they did such a great job helping us with support and promoting this event and doing everything about it. So they were a lot of fun. It sucks that it's soured by what we saw on the field today, but a great experience for all of us. I'm glad you can make it, Tom, and the whole staff. And I feel bad we couldn't get everybody, Michael and Matt. I wish I could have got all of you guys out here, but at some point, next time we go to a foreign country, you'll be top of the list.
Yeah, you get the dibs next time. And you know what? Maybe you'll bring back a W, and then you have first dibs every single time thereafter. But this has been one hell of a ride. And yes, to all of you who came by the old storehouse this week, we had shows 3 days this week out there. If you went to Leopardstown Racecourse and you came by to say hello, it means the world to us that you support us here at warchant.com, Warchant TV, the multimedia empire that is Warchant. Without you, we don't exist. So we're very grateful for that. And we hope on that note, you can throw a like button, smash that like at the bottom of the video. You hate the result, but hit that thumbs up anyway.
The button's not there for liking the game.
Yeah. We want to thank, obviously, behind the scenes as well, Director Ben Spicer, who is also back in Tallahassee and has been remarkable for us in holding it down. Great coverage from Ben and covering a lot of the things that we typically do because we're on different hours. So thanks to Director Ben behind the scenes. We want to thank everybody who tried to call tonight. Very sorry that we were unable to execute that part of the show. We look forward to doing so again next week for the post-game show. That'll be Monday night, 10 to 15 minutes after, 2 Mondays from now, Labor Day Monday, 10 to 15 minutes after the game right here on Warchant TV. Remember, you got Wake Up Warchant coming your way. You've got the Warchant Wrap, all the press conferences. If you want to see how Mike reacts, you can find it right now on Warchant TV, and warchant.com has all of that great coverage as well. So thanks again to everybody who contributed to the program with your kind donations to Warchant TV. And, of course, welcome aboard to T-Spark Enterprises. They have built this year's Warchant Gameday Postgame show, and we look forward to sharing the spotlight with them the rest of this season. So one final time, I don't know I'll ever do this again, Gene, signing off from Dublin, Ireland. He's Gene Williams. My name is Tom Lang. thank you so much for following all of Warchant's coverage this week, and we look forward to talking to you from the stateside here in the next couple.
And all you fans in Dublin, safe travels back. We'll see you soon, hopefully in Tallahassee.
Good night, everybody.